The land of Izala had grown quiet, not with peace, but with mourning. The great king Ikemba, Ferdinand I, had passed on, leaving the throne empty and the hearts of his people heavy. For many seasons he had ruled with wisdom and strength. But now the eyes of the kingdom turned to the horizon, awaiting the return of his only son, Prince Ikechukwu Ferdinand. The prince had left Izala as a young boy to study in faraway lands. Stories said he was being prepared to rule. Others whispered he would never return. But now the royal messengers had confirmed it. Prince Ikechukwu was coming back. And with his return, a new king would rise. But that was not all. According to the ancient customs of Izala, before his coronation, the prince must choose a bride. And not just any bride. He must pick from among the maidens of the kingdom, a woman who would stand beside him as queen. And so, from the palace to the farmlands, the news spread like wildfire. The women of Izala cleaned their homes with extra care. Mothers reminded daughters to walk tall and speak gently. Every young maiden dreamed of what the prince might look like and hoped her beauty would catch his eye. But not everyone prepared with joy. In the compound of Mazi Ukaegbu, the Onowu Prime Minister of Izala, things were different. Once his home had been full of laughter and love. His first wife, Ugo Chinyer, had been the light of his household. Gentle and wise, she had given him a daughter, Adora, whose beauty and kindness became known throughout the land. Her smile warmed hearts, and her voice was like birdsong in the early morning. But when Ugo Chinyer died, sorrow changed Ukaegbu. He remarried a woman named Ifeoma. Many in Izala had shaken their heads in disbelief. Ifeoma was known to be sharp-tongued and heavy-handed. Some whispered she had used charms to win Ukaegbu's heart. Others believed grief had clouded his eyes. Either way, Ifeoma became mistress of the house, and Adaora's life changed forever. From the moment Ifeoma entered, she saw Adaora not as a stepdaughter, but as a threat. Adaora's beauty angered her, her kindness made her jealous, her quiet strength unbearable. She began to treat Adora harshly, sending her to fetch water under the hot sun, refusing her food, and calling her names meant to break her spirit. Her own daughter, Ujunwa, was given everything Adaora was denied. And Ukaegbu, he was blind to it all. If Adaora cried, he would tell her to be strong. If she complained, he would call her ungrateful. Slowly, Adora learned to keep her pain to herself. But the village noticed, and they whispered prayers for her when Ifeoma wasn't listening. Meanwhile, unknown to the people, Prince Ikechukwu had already arrived in Izala, but in secret. Prince Ikechukwu Ferdinand, son of the late king, slipped quietly into the palace through the back gates under the veil of night. His mother, Queen Nkemjika, had waited long for this moment. When she saw her son again, after many years, tears welled up in her eyes. She held him tightly. "My son, my lion has returned," she whispered, her voice trembling with joy. But before she could summon the servants or the guards to announce his return, the prince stopped her. "Mother," he said gently, "I do not wish to be received with drums and fanfare, not yet." Queen Nkemjika looked at him, confused. "Why, my son? The people are eager. They await your return with great longing." Prince Ikechukwu looked into his mother's eyes. "I need to know this land, truly. Not from the palace walls, but from the streets. From the mouths of strangers, not servants. I want to find the heart of this kingdom, and I must choose a queen not with my eyes, but with my spirit." The queen paused. Then slowly she smiled. "You are your father's son," she said. "King Ikemba was my first love. He did not choose me from a throne. He chose me from the village square." She placed her hand on his head. "Go, my son. May your feet lead you to truth, and may your heart know when it finds its match." She later summoned the council of elders and with a calm face announced that the prince's return had been delayed due to unforeseen circumstances. None questioned her. And so, while Izala waited for their prince, the prince waited for Izala in the most unlikely place. Each morning, Ikechukwu rolled his disguised figure to the village market square, the very heart of gossip, commerce, and daily life. His left leg was bound with cloth to appear deformed. A rough walking staff leaned beside him. His bowl sat on the dusty ground, empty. His face was sun-darkened, his fine robes replaced by worn fabric. He listened. He watched. He waited. And what he saw broke his heart. The maidens of Izala, those same ones dreaming of marrying the prince, passed him each day. They did not see a man, they saw nothing. Some laughed, pointing at the handsome cripple with no past. Others tossed leftover food into his bowl as though he Joe. Some didn't even bother with words. They turned their faces with scorn. He was silent, but he remembered every face. It was there, too, that he discovered the secret evil of Chief Okoro, one of the palace elders. Women complained openly, thinking him just another beggar. This chief again, oh? He collected tax yesterday and came again today. What kind of palace tax is collected with cane and insult? What do they even use the money for? They thought they were safe speaking near a cripple. But the prince was listening. He learned that Chief Okoro, in the name of royal taxes, had been extorting the poor women, keeping the money for himself. None of the funds reached the palace. The prince's heart burned with quiet fire. The throne must cleanse its feet before standing tall, he thought. One afternoon, as he sat in thought, a group of loud girls approached. He recognized them. They always mocked him. One of them, Kioma, kicked his bowl deliberately, scattering the coins he had gathered. "You can choose not to help," the prince said, calm but firm, "but mocking a man in pain only reveals your own sickness." Kioma laughed bitterly. "Listen to this beggar, a cripple with no surname. You still have mouth. Today will help you learn silence." Before he could move, they shoved his wheelchair. He fell hard onto the dirt. They laughed and walked away, swaying their hips as if proud of their cruelty. Some people nearby looked, then looked away. Others chuckled. But one voice rose in protest, a voice soft yet urgent. "Please, help him up." None moved. Then a figure ran through the crowd. Adora. Adora dropped her basket and knelt beside the fallen man. She gently lifted him, dusted the soil from his sleeves, and adjusted the strap around his limp leg. Her hands trembled with care. "I'm so sorry," she said softly, her voice like the evening wind. "You have no reason to apologize," he replied, his eyes locked on hers. "You didn't push me." She looked at him again, those warm brown eyes filled with something rare. Empathy. "No," she whispered, "but I cannot see pain and do nothing." From that day, she greeted him each time she came to the market. Sometimes she brought him fresh water, sometimes fruit. Once, when rain fell and others ran past him, Adora covered him with her wrapper. She never asked who he was. She never expected anything in return. And in her simplicity, the prince saw royalty. While Prince Ikechukwu walked the dusty path of humility, wrapped in the disguise of a crippled beggar, dark clouds gathered above the palace. The delay in the prince's public return became a perfect excuse for enemies of the throne to make their move. Among them was Elder Okoro, a man whose face wore tradition, but whose heart hid treason. For many years he had quietly desired the royal seat, not for service to the people, but for the power it gave. Now, with the king dead and the prince unseen, Okoro saw his chance. One night, under the cover of darkness and palm wine, Elder Okoro and a group of elders gathered beneath the Iroko tree behind his compound. The chief priest, once a loyal guardian of the throne, sat beside him with eyes that no longer glowed with truth. "My fellow elders," Okoro said in a low voice, "we have waited long enough. The prince is either dead or lost, and the palace hides the truth." He turned slowly, his face set in a crooked smile. "The people need a king, and I have raised one in my house. Obinna," he said proudly, "my son is strong, educated, fearless. The gods will not punish us for doing what is right for the kingdom." The chief priest, already greased by coin and deceit, nodded solemnly. "I have received signs. The spirits say the throne must not remain empty." And so the lie was born. The next day, a quiet whisper traveled through the kingdom like a snake in the grass. "The prince is dead. The palace is hiding it. Obinna, son of Elder Okoro, will be crowned king." In the palace, Queen Nkemjika sat upon her stool with quiet dignity. When the elders came to present their case and demand that Obinna be prepared for coronation, she simply laughed, a cold, elegant laugh that chilled the men to their bones. "Your foolishness drips like palm oil from broken calabashes," she said, "and you, chief priest, how far you've wandered from the path of the gods." They stormed out, humiliated, but the queen said nothing more. She did not need to. Her son was alive. Her son was watching. And so the charade grew. Obinna, now bloated with false confidence, strutted through the streets like a peacock in borrowed feathers. Maidens who once dreamed of Prince Ikechukwu now turned their attention to him. Every morning, a new girl visited his father's compound with gifts of food and flattery. They painted their faces, sang his name, and offered him sweet words in hopes of becoming his queen. The market square, too, was filled with new drama. Prince Ikechukwu sat ijai in his usual corner, his tattered wrapper draped across his legs, his wooden bowl by his side. He watched as the same girls who mocked him now giggled and flirted with Obinna, who barely gave them more than a passing look. He saw their hunger for power. He saw the pride in Obinna's eyes, and he could not help himself. He laughed, not out of mockery, but from deep sadness and quiet wisdom. "They do not know," he whispered to himself, "that the king they seek is sitting right here in the dust." But there was one who never strayed. Adora. She walked past Obinna like he was air. When others chased titles, she offered kindness to strangers. She still greeted the cripple at the market square, still smiled at him, still brought him fruits, unbothered by the rumors and noise. And that was the moment. The prince realized it fully, not with confusion, not with doubt. He had fallen deeply in love with her, not just because of her face, though she was beautiful, not just because of her voice, though it sang like water, but because of her heart. He watched her walk away, her feet brushing the red earth, and he whispered to himself, "She is my queen, even if the world has not crowned her yet." While the kingdom danced around rumors and false royalty, in Mazi Ukaegbu's compound, Ifeoma was preparing her daughter Ujunwa for what she believed was a royal future. "My daughter," she said, adjusting the beads on Ujunwa's neck, "you are the moon in a sky full of dust. Obinna is already drawn to your beauty. It is you he will choose as queen, not that cursed goat they call Adora." Ujunwa smiled, preening like a peacock, while Adora stood in the corner with lowered eyes, silent. But Ifeoma wasn't finished. She turned to Adora with sharpness in her voice. "And you, thief, I heard you've been sneaking my money to feed that useless beggar at the village square." "Eh? Do you think I don't hear things?" Adora opened her mouth to defend herself, but before words could escape, a heavy slap landed across her face. "You will sleep outside tonight," Ifeoma barked. "Let the beggar come and rescue you there." That night, the rain fell like punishment from the gods. The wind howled, thunder cracked. Adora, soaked and shivering, curled under the leaking kitchen roof, her eyes swollen with tears. And then, in the silence of the night, as she began to drift between fear and sleep, a warm wind passed over her, though no fire was near. She opened her eyes slowly, and there in the rain stood her mother, Ugochinyere, glowing in spirit, her wrapper untouched by the storm. "My Adora," the spirit whispered, kneeling beside her, "the world may cast you aside, but heaven watches. Hold on. You are closer to your crown than you know." And with that, a calmness wrapped Adora like a second skin. She slept peacefully, untouched by rain. The next morning, weakened but determined, Adora carried out her task, off to the market to buy food for the same stepmother who had left her to freeze. As she passed through the village square, she noticed Obinna, tall, arrogant, surrounded by girls, waving like a king who had already taken the throne. She walked past quietly, but Obinna would not let her pass in peace. "Hey," he shouted, "are you blind? You pass a future king and don't kneel or greet. Do you not know I am the next ruler of Izala?" Adora turned, startled. "I'm sorry," she said gently, bowing her head. "Forgive me, Prince Obinna." But her voice had barely faded when trouble arrived. Ujunwa, watching from a distance, saw the exchange. and jealousy flared in her like fire touching dry leaves. She turned and ran home in tears. "Mama," she cried, "Adora is trying to steal Obina from me. I saw her talking to him with her crocodile eyes." Ifeoma's fury needed no second ignition. She sat waiting by the gate, eyes blazing. When Adora returned, carrying the market goods, a burning slap greeted her even before she stepped fully into the compound. "Witch!" Ifeoma screamed. "So now you've started using charms on Obina, eh? You will not succeed." "Mama, please," Adora cried, tears falling freely. "I only greeted him." "Shut your filthy mouth," Ifeoma barked and dragged her toward the old smoke-filled backyard hut, barely fit for animals. "Since you like stealing other people's destiny," she spat, "go and rot here. No food, no water. Maybe you'll dream another man into your net." She slammed the wooden door and locked it tight. Adora wept into the stinking floor, her hands weak, her stomach empty. But her spirit remained unbroken. 2 days passed, and in those 2 days, Prince Ikechukwu waited. No one had seen Adora at the market, no soft greetings, no fruit, no smile, only absence. Worried, he rolled himself from the blacksmith's quarters and made his way, slowly, to Mazi Ukaegbu's compound. When he arrived, he greeted respectfully. "I have come to check on my friend," he said. "She has not been seen." Ifeoma stepped out of the hut, arms folded, mouth wide in laughter. "You wretched cripple," she shouted. "So even in your nothingness, you think you can have Adora as your friend?" "I only came to ask," he began, but Ifeoma was not finished. "She's yours. Take her, useless girl for useless man. What do I care? You can marry her if you like." Before he could reply, she stomped into the hut and dragged Adora out by the wrist. Her hair rough, her face pale from hunger, she flung her toward the prince like garbage. "There, take her. Let me see if your love will feed you both." "Mama, no," Adora cried, crawling back. "Please don't do this to me, please." But her father, Mazi Ukaegbu, stood by silently, arms crossed. Not a word, not a gesture, and as Ujunwa stood behind her mother, laughing and clapping with glee, Ifeoma shouted one final time, "Both of you, get out of this compound." The prince, silent through it all, reached forward and took Adora's hand, gently. Her hands trembled. Together they turned and walked away. Him in his old wheelchair, her by his side, pushing him carefully down the road. Behind them, Ifeoma's laughter echoed. But before them, the road to destiny had already opened. The sky was pale with the breath of morning as Adora pushed Prince Ikechukwu's wheelchair along the red winding road of Izala. Her feet dragged, her breath shallow. Hunger and sorrow had drained her. "Rest a little," the prince said gently. "Let me speak to the blacksmith." But before he could finish, Adora collapsed, her hands slipping from the chair. He caught her just in time. "Adora!" he cried, panic in his voice. Without hesitation, he reached into the folds of his wrapper and pulled out a small phone. The only sign he carried of who he truly was. His fingers trembling, dialed a number. "Mother, it's urgent. I need help." Within the hour, palace guards arrived quietly, cloaked in secrecy. Under the cover of night, Prince Ikechukwu and Adora were taken through the hidden royal path, unseen by villagers, still lost in false celebrations. The coronation day was in 3 days' time, as the whole village prepared for the crowning of Obina. Chief Okoro's son, the Prince Ikechukwu, quietly moved into the palace unnoticed. At the palace, Adora was laid on a soft mat, woven with lion thread. Her wounds were treated. She was bathed in warm water, fed honeyed yam and pepper soup. Her body rested, and her soul calmed. When she finally stirred, sunlight poured softly through the palace curtains, and standing before her, no longer in rags, no longer bent in pain, was the man she thought was a beggar. Dressed in flowing royal robes, gold embroidery tracing his chest, with a lion staff in his hand, Prince Ikechukwu Ferdinand, rightful heir to Izala, stood tall and proud, her lips parted in disbelief. My prince?" she whispered. He knelt beside her, a smile dancing in his eyes. "Yes, Adora, I am Ikechukwu Ferdinand, son of Ikemba, the next king of Izala." I disguised myself to see the truth of our people, and in that truth I found you." Adaora's tears flowed, not from pain, but joy. She bowed her head, but he raised her chin gently. He looked deep into her soul and asked, "Will you be my queen, not just in title, but in life and spirit?" Adaora could barely breathe. "Yes," she whispered through her tears. "Yes, my prince. 1,000 times yes." He leaned forward and kissed her forehead, a seal from the heart, not just the throne. The morning of coronation arrived with grandeur. Drums echoed from the 7 hills. The people of Izala dressed in their finest wrappers and coral beads. Children danced, elders whispered blessings. And standing at the palace square, shoulders raised, chest out, Obinna, son of Chief Okoro, waited proudly. The chief priest stood beside him, ready to place the crown of Izala upon his head. The moment had come. The chief priest raised the crown. Obinna smiled. And then, a voice cut through the air. "Stop!" Gasps rose from the crowd, turning, every eye fixed on the palace steps. There, walking in royal majesty, was Queen Nkemjika, followed by her son, Prince Ikechukwu Ferdinand II. His lion staff gleaming in the sun. Beside him walked a radiant Adaora, now bathed in gold and jewels, her face glowing, her steps graceful, her eyes humble. Her head was held high, not with pride, but with destiny fulfilled. The entire village fell silent. The Queen Mother raised her hand. "Behold," she declared, "my son, the true heir to the throne, Prince Ikechukwu Ferdinand II." The crowd gasped, mouths opened, eyes widened. A murmur turned into a wave of whispers. "It's the crippled beggar from the market. He was the prince all along. And Adaora, he chose Adaora." Many of the maidens who had mocked him lowered their heads in shame. Kioma covered her face. Others stepped back quietly. Obinna stood frozen. Chief Okoro's mouth twitched. Ifeoma clutched her wrapper tightly, her lips quivering. Ujunwa began to cry. The prince stepped forward and raised his voice. "I lived among you," he said. "I saw your hearts. Some welcomed strangers, others mocked the weak. But one soul among you gave love without expecting anything in return. That soul is my queen." He turned to Adaora and gently held her hand. The chief priest, trembling, bowed his head and placed the crown, not on Obinna, but on Prince Ikechukwu's head. "Long live the king," the people shouted. Then the queen's crown was brought forth and gently placed on Adaora's head. "Long live Queen Adaora of Izala," the village roared, tears streaming down many faces. Justice had come, truth had risen, and love, humble and pure, now sat on the throne. The sun had set gently on Izala kingdom after the grand coronation of King Ikechukwu, Ferdinand II, and Queen Adaora. And for a while, peace floated over the land like evening smoke. Some villagers returned home rejoicing, proud of their new king who walked with the wisdom of the ancestors. But not all hearts were happy. In the corners of compounds and inside narrow huts, some sat in silence, bitterness tucked beneath their tongues like kola nut too hard to crack. Among them was Ifeoma, her dreams shattered like broken clay pots. But her pain was only beginning. It started quietly. Ujunwa, her once boastful daughter, began to wither like an uncared yam tendril. She refused food, slept too much, and wept often. One morning, as the cock crowed and the compound began to stir, Ifeoma heard her daughter retching behind the hut. She stormed outside, shouting, "Ujunwa, what is wrong with you? Is it worms, or is it laziness?" But when Ujunwa looked up, her mother saw something in her face, not sickness, but shame. Her hands trembled. "Mama," she whispered, I'm pregnant." Silence, like a spirit passed through the air. Ifeoma's mouth dropped open. "What? Who?" Ujunwa lowered her head. "Obinna. He said he would marry me." Ifeoma's rage returned like fire to dry wood. She grabbed Ujunwa by the arm and marched her straight to Chief Okoro's compound, her voice blazing ahead of her like thunder. "Where is your useless son?" she screamed. "He has ruined my daughter." But as she burst into the compound, her fury froze. She was not alone. 4 other mothers were already seated there, each beside a crying daughter, all pregnant, all pointing their fingers at Obinna, each girl with the same story. He promised me I'd be queen. He said he loved only me. He said once he was crowned, I would wear the crown beside him. Now none wore the crown, and Obinna was nowhere to be found. Chief Okoro sat in his obi, face pale, lips dry, his hands shook like a leaf in the Harmattan wind. I do not know where he is, he whispered. He left 3 nights ago, said he needed air. He never returned. The women began to wail. Where is our justice? One cried. Our daughters' futures, shattered. Another sobbed. Ifeoma, unable to speak, dropped to her knees. She stared at the ground, shame washing over her like cold water. The same girl she had thrown out had become queen. The same prince she mocked was now ruler of the land. And now her own daughter was one of many, deceived, discarded, and left with child. The news spread quickly through the kingdom. Obinna, once admired and praised, was now the shame of the village. His name was spat on lips like bitter leaf. Some said he had fled to a distant land. Others said the gods had cursed him to roam with no peace. King Ikechukwu heard the matter and called for the council of elders. The palace did not arrest the girls or curse their mothers. Instead, King Ikechukwu opened a royal support house in the village, where the pregnant girls could be cared for, where their children would be raised with dignity, not disgrace. He said to the people, the sins of a deceitful man will not define the lives of the innocent. Let these children grow, not in shame, but in strength, and let Izala be a kingdom of second chances. As for Adora, now queen, she quietly visited the young mothers. She brought them food, gave them cloth and herbs, and sat with them like sisters. And that was how the people came to say, the king rules with strength, but the queen rules with compassion. And so, justice was done. The fake prince vanished into the wind. The wicked were exposed, and the throne of Izala stood firm, not because it was built on gold, but because it was guarded by truth. From the dust of shame, she rose in glory. From mockery, he rose in majesty. And from the womb of suffering, a new kingdom was born. Thus ends the story of Adora, the girl the world rejected, but the gods crowned. And from that day onward, Izala was ruled not only with wisdom, but with heart. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment how you felt about the story on the comments section. Please encourage us by liking and subscribing. Put on the notification so that you will be notified whenever we post a story. Thank you and remain blessed.